Good morning, children. Please take a break from posting Bernie memes to go ahead and join us on a trip through some AP vocab. And much like Bernie, once again, I'm asking you to join me to look at AP terms 16 through 20 on your list. At the end of this, we will have our half list completed, which you know by now, probably, maybe, that there is a quiz next week over these 20 words. So be ready. First up is a tough one. I got to be honest. People struggle with it at times, so we're going to take a little extra time with it. It's syllogism. It's also sometimes called deductive reasoning. Here it is. It's a form of reasoning in which two statements are made and a conclusion is drawn from them. That's the definition. You make two statements and there's a conclusion we can draw from them. You'll see what I mean in a second. The syllogism is the format of a formal argument that consists of a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion that comes. Here's an example. Major premise. You are a student in Mr. Puckett's class. Minor premise. All students in Mr. Puckett's class are cool and awesome. Therefore, conclusion, you are cool and awesome, right? You see how those two things work together. Another example of this when it's improperly used, my pet is a dog. All dogs are boys. Therefore, my dog is a boy. You can't prove that all dogs are not boys, but actually my dog is a girl. So it's wrong. But you see how this works, right? You say two things, and if they are both true, then the conclusion also has to be true. So that is a syllogism. You have two statements, and if they are related, and if they are both true, then the conclusion is true. It leads you to a conclusion, right? Major premise, all tragedies end unhappily. Minor premise, Hamlet is a tragedy. Therefore, Hamlet ends unhappily. Next, we have inference. This is something you've been doing all your life, actually, is drawing inferences. To inference something is to draw a reasonable conclusion from the information presented. Unlike syllogism, syllogism is to draw a hard conclusion, a fact, right? Inference is making an educated guess at something. So, for example, I walk into the room, I see my son, his frisbee is on the ground. Also on the ground is a broken lamp. I make the inference, and I ask him, "What are you doing?" He says, "Nothing." I make the inference that he probably was playing with his frisbee indoors and broke the lamp, right? That's a educated guess. It's not a certainty, but it is something a leap that we can probably make. That is an inference. It's an educated guess based on the clues we have as readers. The next two words are related to each other. So let's start with the first one, euphony. Euphony, the word phone in the middle means to listen, right? And you at the beginning, well, that means good or well. So you put it all together, it means good listen. And that's what it is. Euphony is a succession of harmonious sounds used in poetry or prose. It's the opposite of our next word, a cacophony. We'll talk about that in a second. Euphony is anything that sounds pleasant to the ear. It can be music, but it usually is described as the way words go together. Next up, we have euphony's ugly little brother, cacophony. These are harsh words or sounds that are deliberate in poetry or prose, right? When you put words together that sound harsh or unpleasant to the ear because you are trying to draw that out of your reader, that feeling out of your reader. It is the opposite of euphony. The way I always remember this is that this one starts with cacophony, and that's the sound a crow makes, and it's a very unpleasant sound. Caw-caw! 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 It's not very pleasant. Please don't play that back and make a remix of it. Finally, we have subordinate clause, a grammar term. And this is also called sometimes a dependent clause. You may remember this from some of your earlier English classes when you had more of a focus on grammar. And it's something that depends on a main clause, but that's not all that helpful to you if you don't know what a main clause is. By the way, it's not related to Santa. This is clause with an E. No, this is any part of a sentence that cannot stand on its own, right? It's a part of a sentence that if you took it apart would not be a complete sentence on its own. You may remember an independent clause from earlier English classes as a part of a sentence that could stand on its own. So, for example, if you took the sentence, running down the hallway, Mr. Puckett looked like the greatest athlete that has ever lived. If you took the part of the sentence that is, Mr. Puckett looked like the greatest athlete that has ever lived, that is an independent clause. It can stand on its own. If you just took that out, it would be its own sentence. that's a main clause, right? But a dependent clause or subordinate clause is any part of that you take out that isn't. So, for example, again, let's take that same sentence. Running down the hallway, Mr. Puckett looked like the greatest athlete that ever lived. Let's just take the part that says running down the hallway. If you just say running down the hallway, that's not a sentence, right? That is a subordinate clause. Or if you just took the part that says the greatest athlete that ever lived, again, subordinate clause, can't be its own sentence. The example I have right here. Yellowstone Park is a national park that is in the West that is known for its geysers. This underlined section cannot be its own sentence if you were to take it out, and that makes it a dependent clause. Anyway, that is vocab for this week. Again, look for that quiz coming up next week. Look for review stuff towards the end of this week as we get ready. And don't forget, by the way, that we have the Stranger exam coming up the second half of this week. Good luck, everybody. Have a great week.